Good afternoon, everyone. 皆様お待たせいたしました。続きましては、日米における暗号資産規制とステーブルコインの普及をお届けいたします。Our next presentation is Crypto Regulation and Stablecoin Adoption in the US and Japan. それでは早速こちらの方々にご登壇いただきましょう。And now let's welcome our guest panelists. First, representing Circle Internet Group, Mr. Heath Tarbert, and representing the House of Councilors, Ms. Satsuki Katayama. The session will be moderated by Ms. Emily Parker of Coincheck Group. Okay, everyone, please come on up to the stage. それでは皆様どうぞご登壇ください。拍手でお迎えください。
Hi everyone, welcome. This is a very special panel talking about two jurisdictions where a lot of very interesting things are going on. So I'm just going to get right to it. So let's start with sort of a big picture look at what's happening in crypto regulation. Now, if this panel had been a year ago, this would be a completely different conversation. So much has changed. So let's just in the most general terms, describe, Heath, why don't you start, how you see the state of crypto regulation in the United States right now? What's going on? What's good? What remains to be done? How would you summarize the current situation?
Well, as you said, it has been a complete sea change. I think many people in the United States believe that there was effectively a war on crypto, a war on this industry just a year or two ago. With the change in the presidential election, as well as changes in the views of legislatures on both sides of the aisle, we now have a very pro-crypto administration that is looking to provide the regulatory clarity that this industry has wanted and needed for years, and to be fair, that Japan has done over time and instituted. So the United States fell behind. The passage of the Genius Act, and we can talk about that in a little bit more detail, was a watershed moment, making stablecoins for the first time really the equivalent of essentially cash and providing sound regulation. There's still a lot more work to do. We don't yet have comprehensive market structure regulation, but we are now on the pathway.
Thank you. Katayama-sensei, how would you describe the current state of crypto regulation in Japan right now?
Before starting Japanese side, I visited Washington, D.C. in this January in order to attend the inauguration of President Trump. There I was introduced SEC Chairman Atkins and Vice Chair of Lower House Banking Committee Heisinger, and my dear friend, we are both in common friends, Mr. Haggerty, the presenter of the Genius Act. And they all insisted that direction of Trump administration to centering the crypto in United States will never change because they firmly believe in the future of crypto, and not only in investment side, but also in payment, settlement side. And they were very quick in preparing a Genius Act, he sent me. And we have already legislation in our Payment Services Act in as early as 2017. But this time, because the scale has changed, Mr. Taggart had a long experience as legislator, and his own company is one of the prominent and most voluminous USDC, and which is more and more nearing the scale of cash. And in Japanese side, first JP coin, the business has been registered only last week. But we already have that legislation system, and all anti-fraudulent activity regulations. But we have to think about more, and we are thinking about the changing of classification of crypto itself, namely Bitcoin or Ethereum or already well-known crypto investment. And they are becoming not only payment, but also like investment tool. So it's more convenient to include the treatment of these crypto, including stable coins, into our financial instruments and exchange act, 金融商品法, 金融商品取引法. That will be a more affinity. We have more affinity in all sense.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And if I understand correctly, changing that classification could bring down the tax rate for crypto.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Because how many account in Japan is holding crypto asset? Do you have any idea? We have already 12 million account. And it more than FX trade account. And most of them are young generation and beginner of invest. And they would like to sell it, but for the time being, it's classified as miscellaneous income, whose income tax rate is 55%. So no one can sell it. If it's divided as financial instruments assets, the sales and capital gain will be the same as equity or the others. So that will go down to 20%, approximately same level as the United States.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah, that's really so important. For those who are not following, basically what's happening in Japan is that the tax rate can be as high as 55% at the moment, and moving the classification of crypto from the Payment Services Act to the FIEA could bring the tax rate down to 20% more in line with stocks. And that's expected to happen in the next year or two, right? Pretty soon.
Yeah, we have to conclude our tax commission in LDP as of the end of this year. I have been the chairman of Financial Services Committee of LDP. That has already presented that direction. And it was cabinet decided. So that's normally it's very strong. But as you know, Japanese political side, we lost majority. So we have to talk with another parties. So that will take some time, and it will become a little bit more complicated. But there are several other parties who are in line with our idea, so we will see. So normally, we have to finalize that conclusion by December.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's really important. And, you know, we just addressed one very big challenge in Japan, which has been the high tax rate. Heath, I want to turn to you for a moment because there's so much excitement about what's going on in the United States in the crypto industry, but there's clearly some challenges that remain. At least I have many views on this, but I'd like to hear yours. What do you see as some of the remaining challenges in the US on the regulatory front? Or is there anything that you see that concerns you, or just, you know, what remains to be done?
Yeah, so first of all, just to emphasize the good news is that, you know, for the first time in recent history, the United States is really embracing digital assets and crypto, not just as an extra asset class, like a new asset class, but we at Circle look at this as the future of the very future of the financial system itself, right? WebEx. It is the way we're going to conduct business in the future over open blockchains. So there is a realization in the United States that this is more than just a fad, that this is fundamentally going to change the financial system in the same way that the internet fundamentally changed communication, right? Because that's ultimately what we're seeing. So what's left to do? Well, stablecoin legislation was absolutely critical because our view is it provides that base layer of money on the new internet financial system on WebEx. But what we don't yet have is clarity as to how other digital assets are regulated. What's a security versus what's a commodity? What about custody services? What about exchanges? How should these things be listed? How should they be traded? All of those rules have yet to be written, legislated actually. And so right now in the United States, we are focused on market structure legislation that hopefully will get passed by the end of the year. At the same time, even the Genius Act, while we have the law on the books, it hasn't yet been implemented. So there's a number of rules that would need to be written by regulatory agents under the Genius Act. So that's where we are today. But as we said, there has been a major sea change, and we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a great point. So the issue of regulatory clarity has been a pain point in the United States for a long time. And this is one area where I think Japan has actually been ahead, because Japan, you might not agree with all the regulations, but they're pretty clear and have been for a long time. And Heath, what is holding up clarity, the Clarity Act specifically? Because there actually is an act that's supposed to resolve these issues, but has not yet been passed.
Well, luckily, the good news is that it passed in our House of Representatives, and now it's in the Senate. And so the hope is that there can be some Senate views on the Clarity Act, and they can pass their version of it as soon as possible. But right now, there does seem to be a broad consensus that we need regulatory clarity. The United States has great leaders, similar to the one sitting right next to me, who saw years ago the promise of this technology and worked constructively. But in the United States, we had an environment where people would rather take people to court than to actually say, here are sensible rules of the road. And now we finally see that happening, but we are waiting for our second chamber of our legislature to act.
So Japan actually had, we mentioned before, stablecoin regulation way before the United States. Japan was probably the first major economy in the world to have stablecoin regulation. And I've been saying for a long time that US policymakers should have been looking at Japan's example earlier. Katayama Sensei, I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you think that Japanese politicians or people in the Japanese government who work on crypto are looking at what's happening in the United States and taking lessons from what's happening right now?
Yeah, because our securities exchange law after the World War II was introduced from the United States, so we have much in common. And after seeing Atkins, I had a discussion with Mark Ueda acting, and they said they will have a demarcation between CFTC and SEC, and that's a point where both two countries are slightly different, because we, from the beginning, have been thinking about almost all kind of currency-denominated or coin-denominated type blockchain under the cover of FSA. So it's more simple. But this time, I thought it's very interesting that in Genius Act, there is a mature blockchain such as blockchain or Ethereum, namely. He gave me a very good introduction, but these matured blockchain are something like gold or rice or so on. Everybody can see what it is. And non-matured, prematured, there's lots of kinds of newly born blockchains, and they have to be in the hand of SEC to do the lesson, maybe, for preparation or the code explanation or anything, or who's back behind, or decentralization, and so on. That is the idea that all over the world, any country's legislator need. Because not all the crypto-type devices are the same. They are good and bad, and mature and premature. So I had an impression on that in January. So I promised with Mr. Atkins that we will to harmonize to some extent the regulation for the benefit of both sides, because that will touch upon currency and cash. That means yen-dollar transaction is by far the most voluminous in the world. And Mr. Kato, who I think who came this morning, and Mr. Besant had broadly agreed upon that on early February. So we basically, our two legislation is not so far from that. But crypto was different, such a newcomer, such impressive. big one. Someone scared. So that's why our approach has been a bit different. But this time, we are in the process of harmonization. That is great.
Interesting. How would you say most Japanese politicians feel right now about crypto? My impression, and tell me if this is incorrect, my impression is that there are a few people who are very pro-crypto in sort of Japanese politics, and the rest of the people just don't have that strong an opinion about it. Is that correct, or is there actually an opposition?
Yeah, you are very correct, because I myself is not from the tech field. I'm from law and legal and administration field, so I cannot write code. So please explain the code, Ms. Katayama, in white paper. I can do that. Yeah, but I'm delighted to know that neither he is. But so the skepticism vis-a-vis new things, such a dramatic thing, exists, I have to admit. And our commission has been in LDP more than 40 years, and we have been tackling most of the matter. And there's another new session of DX committee. I'm in both, but DX committees, some people are extremely advanced, and the other are watching. Wow, they are talking about what we don't understand. But in order to pass the legislation, we have to persuade everyone. And public opinion is very, very important. So this is the time to do that. And in order to do that, stable coins, very nice. Stable coin is not the target of invest. It's a sort of payment and management and efficiency making. Don't you think so?
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's move on to stablecoins. That's a perfect segue. So Heath, turning back to you, given that we're not in the United States right now, can you maybe just summarize a little bit just what the Genius Act does, what it accomplished, and again, what I'm actually really interested in hearing is what remains to be done, what some of the challenges are. If you could just sort of, I don't think anybody would know this as well as you. So
Sure, and just to kick it off, you asked, well, how is Japan learning from the United States? But I would be remiss if I didn't say that the United States is learning from Japan. And yes, it's clear maybe not every Japanese legislator understands and appreciates crypto, but they didn't ignore the technology. They had the courage to act, and they moved forward. And I think that's really important. And so when the Genius Act was being debated in the United States, we would always point to Japan and say,
oh, that's interesting.
USDC is a US dollar stablecoin, yet it has more federal regulatory clarity in Japan than it does in the United States. So the good news is, of course, to your question, the Genius Act passed last month. What does the Genius Act do? Well, we believe it essentially enshrines in law the circle way of doing business, which is one-for-one reserves. So every stablecoin that's issued under Genius will have to be backed one-for-one with high-quality liquid assets. No algorithms, no other types of assets and NFTs or anything like that, but every dollar has to be backed dollar for dollar with something safe like treasury bills. The other requirement it imposes is it ensures that there is transparency, that there's reporting on the reserves. So you as a stablecoin holder can look at the website and look at various filings and know, okay, it actually is backed one-for-one. And to that point, it also requires third parties to come and audit and attest that the assets are actually backing it. And then finally, it requires some kind of prudential supervision. All of those were elements that Circle sort of in some ways imposed on ourselves before it was required, but we were active in the process of the Genius Act. And so it sets an international, it's very consistent with international standards. There's one more very important aspect of the Genius Act that touches on what what my colleague had just said about international recognition, which is under the Genius Act, if there is a non-US stablecoin regime which has very similar rules and regulations, the United States government can recognize that, and that stablecoin can come into the United States. So it is a way for Japan's regime to be recognized in the US. just as hopefully Japan will one day recognize Genius Act as well.
Okay, that's a very good summary. Let's, I have some follow-ups on that, but I just want to move on to Japan quickly, because I'd like to hear your views on the state of stablecoin regulation in Japan. So my understanding is that, again, Japan gets enormous credit for being so early on stablecoin regulation, but there's been some challenges, because as you said yourself, you know, right now, we finally have a JPY stablecoin, but it's taken a good amount of time. And my understanding is there's been some challenges among businesses to issue. And I would just love to hear your view, if you think there have been challenges in getting more businesses to issue stablecoins, or just how you see the current state of stablecoin regulation in Japan.
Yes, stablecoin regulation still in the Payment Services Act, and this has been in the first time enacted 2017, and crypto asset regulation enhanced in 2020 as sort of a custodial wallet. As you mentioned, there has been some accident, so we needed custodial wallets, and that was enhanced. And then, taking the example of United States last year, e-money stablecoin regulation widened in order to allow, include a short-term government bond of up to 50% for reserve. Of course, the principal is also 1 yen, 1 coin, as is United States, but also in US they can use repo trading of short-term TB. So we try to allow the same sphere for our financial people. So to this, the situation is mutually harmonizing, being harmonized. But we talked about this morning, so if I mention from me, from the very start, we took the example of PayPal when we created the legislation in 2017. That PayPal's payment limit is $10,000, a small amount for daily shopping. And at that moment, yen was higher. So we took it 1 million yen. Now it's maybe different. And in euro, 10,000 euro has been set. But in order to expand the scope of this good stablecoin for the benefit of every business, every trade, every international B2B, so of course, $10,000 is too low, as 1 million yen is too low. So how to cope with releasing these seeding, upper seeding, is how to secure the confidence in this scheme, in this infinite possibility scheme. So there has been some ways, all fraudulent activities clause originally taken from US Securities Exchange law, because I did it in 1988 when Japan first introduced Insider Trading Act. So we have a dump and bump in your word. So front landing, or we have to look around all the fraudulent activity and cope with that, and KYC, of course. All these things have to be well prepared to persuade the most negative person.
Sure, yeah, that's the big challenge. I'm just curious, are there other areas where you feel that Japanese stablecoin regulation is a little bit too strict?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, as for the seeding, I have to admit that, because so far, we have not yet heard the industrial people's voices in order to make full use of B2B big payment. But we can well imagine it must be big payment, and a certain African community or Central America, I don't know, the big, and now even with SWIFT, it takes time and much fee. That's inconvenient. So maybe hearing these voices, we have to change the ceiling. And not only relaxing the ceiling, but also, as is done in United States, we have to introduce reporting requirements or more strict KYC requirement. That is quite possible, feasible.
Yeah, so thank you, Katayama-sensei, for such an important point. Obviously, we very much value the Japanese regime and seek to be fully compliant with it, but as you've pointed out, there is this transaction limit of 1 million yen, which means that effectively anywhere from $7,000 to $10,000 is all you can send in a single transaction.
But just to be clear, like you can just keep sending transactions, right? Like it's not...
You can, but if you're a business and someone buys, you're a Japanese car manufacturer and you want to be paid in stablecoin or parts or something like that, and you want to actually do a seamless transaction, having a transaction limit at that level, in many ways, as you said very well, sort of precludes the B2B business use cases. And then you get to yourself with a situation where you're kind of, gaming it to say like, all right, well, I owe you 87 million yen. I'm going to do 87 different transactions or 88 or something like that. And I think, it arguably makes Japan a little less competitive to even places like the European Union, which is pretty strict, which doesn't have such a limit.
Interesting. And do you think that limit will be revised? What do you think are the chances of that happening?
Yeah. There are something we can do without changing the law itself. That means without passing the diet. There could be some devices. But our first JPY coin is only just registered. They have not yet issued.
Soon, but yeah, not yet. Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's turn to use cases, because this is a big question about stablecoins. Heath, let's start with you. What, in your view, and not limited to Circle, just in general, what are like the killer stablecoin use cases in your opinion?
Well, obviously, the first and foremost uses, which all of you in the audience have probably used it for, is buying and selling digital assets. When you're on a digital asset exchange, you can move in and out of digital assets far more quickly and in a more liquid manner by using a stable coin. But it's important that and policymakers realize this, that stable coins can be used for far more than that. A store of value for those that want to hold dollars, particularly in countries where you have a central bank that is not necessarily one that you can trust. This isn't a country like Japan, but we're talking outside the G20. Many people would want some portion of their life savings to be held in a stable coin, and something like USDC that's issued from the United States, trusted and transparent, becomes that store of value. Remittances, cross-border remittances. Right now, to send money overseas, it costs something like 6 to 7%, right, depending on where you are. So just simply sending money using stable coins allows you to do it safely, securely, and seamlessly as if you're sending an email. And then there's the business use cases, and they are myriad. If a Japanese company wants to sell products into Africa, for example, number one, they may not get paid. So they send the product and the money doesn't come necessarily, or they have to wait 5 days. To be able to use stablecoin transactions nearly instantaneously, avoid all the FX fees, basically any exchange of money, particularly when there's a cross-border element, but even domestically, in my view, can be enhanced and made more efficient, cheaper, and quickly if you use stablecoins.
Thank you. And Katayama-sensei, what about in Japan? What are the use cases for stablecoins in your opinion?
Yeah, that's the point. Maybe I am going to talk with, I have my own study small group after returning from United States. For the first time, it was among the most biggest crypto exchange people. And then Nomura Daiwa joined, and then Japan's Bankers Association joins. So we have a financial circle that are developed, and so as Europe is, so as United States is. I think in this historical movement, we have to include everyone. And then in United States, apart from this entirely open, wide scheme like USDC. You have JP Morgan owned, what was the name? Token deposit, Onyx, because everyone is cultivating a new blockchain. It's amazing. And his company's speed is amazing. I didn't know that 1 second, 10,000 transactions. I have never heard of that. But
That's our
that
ARC
will
blockchain.
change. That will change because blockchain's demerit was being slow. But if it's 10,000, 1 year after that will be 10 times. So that will undercover that the speed problem. And then what will come? The insurance. Depository institution have its own prudential rule. So if they issue something, that might be covered, deposit insurance. But his company don't have to pay insurance. So that will be cheaper. So all the kind of these devices might be a sort of classified and then cover each other or compete each other and will create new, efficient, and borderless, and each authority can detain its authority as currency political reasons. That's the point. That's the point where Libra didn't go well.
Absolutely. And,
Yeah.
you know, we've walked through the current use cases, but how many in this room are developers or work with developers? Yeah, okay, finally some hands. Don't be shy. What really excites me are the cases that you guys are coming up. Circle's an internet platform company, so we're encouraging developers like all of you. You guys will come up with ingenious ways to embed stablecoins into your products, into your companies, building on top of some of the infrastructure that companies like Circle are building, and that in many ways is what excites me. We think of the intersection between AI, right? We'll have a certain scenario probably in the future where we have agentic payments, where we have AI agents interfacing with each other. Well, if they're going to conduct transactions, what would be the ideal way in which they'd pay each other? Probably stablecoins. So that's the kind of, we don't even know all of the application of stablecoins, which is my point, because many of you out there in the audience will invent them.
Heath, I just want to ask you specifically, though, because USDC was such a trailblazer in Japan specifically, what do you think are some of the Japanese stablecoin use cases? Because there was some skepticism here, people saying, oh, I don't know what stablecoin use cases are. So I'm curious what you see about Japan.
Yeah, so I think particularly cross-border payments. So Circle has a new application called the Circle Payment Network, and it's a way to connect financial institutions and other payment processing firms all around the world, so people can move money. You can make a payment in yen, and it can come out the other side in Brazilian real, and we're able to do that through USDC in the middle, and we're able to conduct FX transactions far more cheaply and efficiently by matching banks and financial institutions around the world using the stablecoin layer rail in between. So that's just one example of a real-world use case.
I want to turn quickly to central bank digital currencies, CBDCs. Do we even need them at all? I mean, in the sort of stablecoin era?
Yeah, that's the point. So we have 4 or 5 minutes. I was very, very amazed when I visited Washington, D.C. I saw 20 or 25 people, important people. Many of them asked me, Satsuki, Japan wouldn't go with CBDC, don't you? Don't go there. They are communists. They are not decentralized, and they of course, their scheme allow us to correct every move, every financial move of everyone into central banks. That is so scary. Most of people told me.
Yeah.
And then they have legislation in lower house to strictly prohibit having any kind of CBDC.
Right.
I think it's an idea because that's not central bank's job. But I don't know why, but several years ago, Bankers Association in Europe and European Central Bank started to study that. So Our Bank of Japan is in a very good relationship with them, so we are studying them. And even Fed has the number. Maybe you are not, but the number. But they're scary, depleting. And now, I think the dice has been already thrown. Maybe we won. This type of stablecoins device won, defeating central bank type CBDC. But it maybe have its completely different role, maybe. I still don't know. No, I still don't know. But we are not inclined to do it in commercial business. Instead, stablecoin, as I mentioned, small, young investment beginners are main holder of Japan's crypto account, about 1/3 or more. And many of them are coming from Mercari. Thank you for Mercari. All fashionable girls are using that. And they put their money, the rest of the money, into Bitcoin with a very, very small amount. But they do have Bitcoin. That's lovely. So I think from the beginning, after decreasing our tax ratio to 20%, they can sell it. And then change to, they can make full use of stablecoin instead of taking money back to bank. So I think this type of exchange between investment tool or account to account will be the first of the normal user or widespread user, even though the amount may be small.
Every country has to make its own decision whether or not to have a CBDC. I think to your point, a number of Western countries, including the United States, or democracies, I should say, regardless of where they are in the world, have chosen to avoid a CBDC. There's concerns about privacy, citizens' rights, surveillance, and all of that. Our stablecoins, USDC and EURC, are designed to work with other stablecoins or CBDCs, but in the United States, they've made a clear decision. No CBDC. I think President Trump said, "over my dead body," and the Genius Act actually effectively prohibits the Federal Reserve from experimenting. So for the near and probably longer term future, if you want a US dollar on blockchains traded over the internet, it's going to be in the form of stable coins.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up. We're pretty much out of time, but thank you so much. I learned a lot from this conversation.
We have almost won this war. Democracy won.
It's a great way to end this. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tarbert, Ms. Katayama, and to our moderator, Ms. Emily Parker. それではこれより集合写真を行います。Okay, may I ask our three panelists to please gather into the center of the room? We will have a quick photo shoot. それではゲストの皆様もどうぞ写真撮影の方お願いいたします。Okay, if you could all look at the camera person with a big smile. There we go. はい、よろしいでしょうか。ありがとうございました。皆様、今一度大きな拍手をお願いいたします。Thank you all very much.